for me, the easiest way to explain what a user experience designer does in their daily work life basically is like explaining to my grandmother what I do at work. It's just like, because everyone's used some product or some app which just doesn't make sense to you. And I mean, that's quite common, and our jobs as UX designers is to make sure that doesn't happen really. So just like, as a user, I should just understand what I'm supposed to do. Say that I'm using a product, and the product is made for people like me, basically, like users who are as I am. And if I can't understand what to do with the product, then I say that's like most likely because they didn't test it properly on the users who are supposed to use it. Because then they would have noticed that I can't understand it.
Exactly.
Very general description, but that's sort of how it goes, I guess.
Yeah, like the reason why we have to think user-centered is because it's not us that's going to use the product, but it's, in the end, it's the user. And if the user doesn't know how to use this product, they will not use it.
Yeah.
And that's why it's very important to have them like in mind from the beginning. That's and like work from them.
I guess the process can look quite different depending on what you're doing, but generally starts with like first some sort of prioritization and validation phase, basically where we as a team, together with all the feedback and with input from our customers and patients, sort of decide that, you know, currently this is the most important problem because of these different reasons. And once you've sort of narrowed down that, okay, this is the problem we'll solve, then you move into just finding out as much as possible about that problem and how that problem affects the users and like what the, like much more into the details of the problem basically.
And when we found out like these details by asking users, by trying out like what is your problems today, then we can start like prototyping, and in best case we can do it together with our users, but otherwise we can have different examples and they can help us like decide which one is the better.
Yeah.
And then keep like narrowing it down, like different iterations with more granular prototypes.
Yeah. It's very rare that you manage to get the perfect design in the first try. I mean, it's almost impossible. I mean, the reason being that you are, as a designer, and like as the people building the product, you're not the ones who will actually be using it.
Exactly.
And the users who will be using it in the end, the end users, are, I mean, could have a completely different background. They're probably not designers, and they're gonna have different needs than you have when you test it out, basically.
Yeah.
So that makes it really hard to get it right on the first try, and then the way you get around like that obstacle is to just iterate many times and change something in the design, test it again, see if it's understood better and is more usable to your users until you're ended up in a final concept, basically, which works as good as possible.
So we have different ways of validating, right? We have, in the beginning of the process, we're trying like to maybe come up with ideas together with users or try to understand them, and then like make a really quick prototype that we can like shuffle around a lot. And do you mean like this, or do you mean like this?
Yeah.
But then we move on, like when we think we have a concept, that we maybe have more like a user test where we have an interview with the user and we show, okay, can you please do this scenario? and they get to try it and have their give us feedback. What's good and what's bad with this.
Yeah, so basically start quite broad with a lot of different concepts that are quite rough, very lo-fi paper prototypes basically often, and then when you move forward just narrow it down to essentially one final concept in the end, which is validated a lot of use tests.
And it's a different way also to what we're trying to validate. Are we validating the value? Is it does this actually solve your problem? Is this what you need in your everyday life? Is this the solution to your problem? And then there's also later on the usability aspect where we can validate is this an intuitive way to do this? Can everyone find the different way to navigate, for example?
Right. So basically validating the value of the solving the problem itself is much more deep into use and longer more complex processes. But then for example the different online services we use for just quickly validating basically a 10 or 5 or 10 second scenario. It's a quick prototype.
Exactly, more validate in the scenario, can you do this with this solution? And they just get to click and we can see how many percentage managed to do it.
Yeah.
And then we make sure, okay, it's understandable and it's intuitive. But to actually see if it's solve the problem for the user, we need to go to our actual users and discuss with them and go more deep into what's their problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, we want to talk about the patient panel that we started as well.
All right. So the patient panel, how do we use the panel in different ways to validate?
And first of all, our patient panel, who are they? And this is a group of patients that decided that they want to be a part of changing their way of seeking care, and so we can have them and ask them how would you like to seek care, and they can give us both feedback overall, but then we also can use them in new specific designs where we can try new things. If we have a concept for something, we can ask one of the patients in the patient panel, and they can try it and they can validate it with us. And
give feedback and propose changes and stuff.
Exactly.
That's really, really cool. And then for the patient panel itself, now we have 12 or 13 patients in the panel, and of course we try to make it as diverse as possible with when it comes to different age groups and different how used you are to technology and different backgrounds and different people with different accessibility needs, for example.
Exactly. For example, if you have a visual impairment, how can you use the service, and will it work with different accessibility tools?
And also, for example, the tools themselves, our quality assurance team can test so the product works with the tools. But when it comes to an actual user who lives with a visual impairment and uses these tools every day in all the different digital services, that contextual feedback is hugely valuable as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, for me, of course, there's no perfect product when it comes to usability and to make it user-centric, but the perfect product for me in that aspect would be just a service where you instinctively understand exactly what the service is for, how the service will basically solve your problem, and you understand naturally what you're supposed to do, and
And the feeling will be like, oh, finally, this is what I've been looking for.
Yeah.
This will help me solve my problems, and I can just do it immediately without asking someone. It's
Yeah.
like,
How do you do that? Like, how can you make that dream happen?
yeah, for doing that, you need to, I guess, like really know your user. Like, not only what are their problems, but also how do they work and what is intuitive to them. And for that, you really need to like try and test with a lot of different users. And then, essentially, when you develop that, and it will meet like a lot of different users, they will hopefully have that feeling that this was designed for me. This helps me.